Did Natalee Holloway get justice? That's the question I think a lot of people are wondering after the plea deal that was made between the United States and Joran Sloot recently. Natalee's mother, Beth, saying that yes, and I'm paraphrasing, she feels like justice was served and that she can now have some closure. Joining me to discuss this, Robin Dreeke, retired FBI head of the Behavioral Analysis Program. Robin, all that matters, I guess, really is mom in this when it
Yeah.
comes down to it, and what she's feeling, and if she feels she has closure, good, because she certainly is entitled to it. On the other end of it, I'm looking at this case. I'm looking at how easy it would have been for someone to say to Joran Sloot, "Hey, all you have to do is say that yes, you did this. Tell us the story you got," which seems to rotate by the day. And then we're going to give you 20 years, and you'll probably never serve any of it because it's going to run side by side with what you're serving in your own country. This just doesn't feel like justice was served in terms of punishing someone for this crime, especially after an admission like this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, your opening question is such a good, profound one. Did Natalee Holloway get justice? She's dead. She won't have justice.
True.
She deceased prematurely in a otherwise fruitful life, which is a sad, tragic part. The justice, as you said, is for the mom and the family, and the fact that they define what justice is for them,
Hmm.
and that is they wanted some closure, and I think they got their closure. Now, when it comes to the justice system, the thing that really struck me with this, I don't like Aruba's system.
Yeah.
How can you have a statute of limitations on murder? I just that just boggles my mind,
Yeah.
and that's the real sad part. I, so I'm going to use my conjecture voice here, as I always do on your show. To me, this is a troubled individual that was addicted to drugs. So I mean, you don't start smuggling cocaine into prison unless you have a pre-established issue with drugs. And so I think this is a dope dealer. Excuse the just the the
Yeah.
root vernacular for it. That is just a horrible human being that has rage issues. That when he feels slighted from any female, he's going to act out violently, and that's exactly what happened to Natalee Holloway. But he's clever enough. And I say just enough because I think he's a low intellect kind of guy, but clever just enough to know the legal systems where he was doing these things to get away with it.
Yeah.
That's the injustice. And as long, but again, all that matters to me, and I think most people, is the family.
Hmm.
They're not getting Natalie back, but they can at least have some rest. And luckily he was dumb enough, under whatever drug-induced craze he was, to try to extort the parents. I
Hmm.
mean, it's adding depravity to horribleness by him doing it, but it tipped his hand and to allow this to come to fruition.
Why do you think they made a deal with him to begin with? Because that to me in itself was troubling as well. The original parameters that we had heard of what was going to happen. They're going to come in here. They're going to try him for the extortion of the $25,000 from Beth Holloway, Natalie's mother, and he'll likely get another 30 some years that would run on top, not side by side, but on top of his current sentence in Aruba, where then he'd come here to the States and serve that. Now suddenly it's 20 years consecutively that will be time served in Aruba, and the only way he'd be seeing a jail cell in the United States is if for some reason the sentence there were to be excused or he were to be let out of that. Other than that, there's no reason for him to come here. Why even make a deal with someone like this? Just to hear the words come out of his mouth, "I killed her"?
Yeah, I think so. Only they can really answer that question. And I think so much time has been able to pass that they're able to move from, through the phases of grief.
Hmm.
And I think they finally got to a phase of grief that they're just looking for closure at any cost. Because I think they just have moved beyond him. Again, pure conjecture on my point. But Yeah, I'm glad for them that it's just done. So all the hypotheses that it was him all these years and being suspected of it, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for confirmation, looking for closure. They know how she went. It was horrendous. It was just tragic. But I think enough time had passed that they're able to get to that phase where they're not focusing on him, they're over him.
Mhm.
It's about her and their closure. That's why they're able to do it, I think.
Sure. When we're talking specifically about what he admitted to it with the investigators to make this deal, it's not the same story that he's talked about in the past. In the past, it was they were out on a boat, cinder block weighed her down, and she went to the bottom of the ocean. Now it's they were on a beach and she rejected his advances, so he happened to go find a cinder block and the brutality of how it was described was almost, I felt like him taking a little pitchfork to the family and going, here her face caved in, or whatever horrible way that he phrased it. um eh, does it matter if he's not telling the same story, if his story isn't even true? I mean, I believe he probably killed her,
Mhm.
but the fact that the story keeps changing, what is that? Why is that? And then why did investigators buy that? Was this all mainly weighed on Beth Holloway being a part of this, saying if he wants to admit, then yeah, then we can do this? Was it more her decision for it to go down this road? Or were investigators, would they be more apt to do whatever makes the most sense so he sees the fullest extent of the law?
I don't get the sense that the investigators are going for full extent of the law on this. It looks like they're just trying to service the mother. And yeah, his story's changing all the time. Time has passed. Again, drug induced actions, that time, brain cells killed, false memories implanted. There's a lot of things that can take place in someone's memory banks before they actually admit something openly like this. And so the only thing that what mattered to the mother was that he admitted he did it. All right. So
Mhm.
how he did it, well, if they're going for prosecution of it, they're going to want certain specifics, so they can go for. But again, it shows intent. It shows a lot of things, no matter how it transpired. But they don't have a weapon. They don't have a body. So what they have an admission of guilt, and that admission keeps changing over time. Which, okay, given his background, given his time lapse and from the from the event to now, all these things come together to make it whatever he wants. I To me, he doesn't even require or need any more attention because he's going to be away for a while,
Mhm.
a lot while longer. Um, what's really tragic is he's going to get out if he lives.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think many people are very concerned with, because he's already done this twice now. Very likely is going to repeat it again, because that's just kind of his arc of life. He's got reps in on this, and it seems to be what he likes. I use some of your
Yeah,
words.
I know. I saw smiling. It's good
I've
job.
been using them in conversation all the time. I'm like, Robin taught me this. But no, I mean, what do you make of this? Because I know there is some sort of caveat in the Aruba law. I know it's 12 years for statute of limitations on murder, which doesn't make a lot of sense, unless do they just have so much murder there that they can't keep up with their prison system?
That's what my impression was. I haven't dug deep on it, but my impression was just that if they have a statute of limitations and they also have a limit on the number of years they can serve unless it's a life sentence and they don't have capital punishment, then it sounds to me like an overburdened system or it's but again, that's conjecture. I'd have to research it a little deeper because until this came up, I hadn't even thought about it because we always kind of immerse ourselves in our own culture and our own context of what our legal system is, kind of assuming the rest of the world, at least of the democratic countries, are very similar. And obviously they're not. And so this one deviates a bit from the other things I've seen.
Another thing I'm wondering about on this, with the statute of limitations being 12 years, it's not super clear. And I've tried to do some research on this. Some people have pointed this out. Jennifer Coffindaffer, another former
Hmm,
FBI,
yep.
she was talking about this the other day with me, that the fact that the Aruba authorities have now requested case documents on this, including his description of killing Natalee Holloway and some other behind the scene things that they found. It almost kind of leads towards the sign that they may use something in their law, which does exist. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is or how it is or what the statute is, where the statute of limitations can actually be waived and they can
Right.
re-enter this case. What do you know about that? And is that part of a longer game here of, well, maybe we can't try him in the US under our laws that we have, but maybe if we do this here and we send him back and we send them all this stuff, maybe he could face murder charges in Aruba again, or for this case specifically.
Yeah, great points. And I saw the same thing reported, and let's hope so. Conjecture on that
Yeah.
is, Aruba, this is a court of public opinion. This is a big case, got a lot of notoriety. And the last thing a country that relies on tourism a lot is a brand reputation damage
Hmm.
event. Like when this first happens, they took a hit, just like areas of Mexico take a hit every time there's murders and the cartels are doing something.
Hmm.
These areas that rely on an economy based on one thing don't like brand image damage.
Hmm.
And so if they can so again, if you have someone who's altruistic down there and is mission oriented on bringing justice for the Holloway family, as well as they're cognizant of brand damage from Aruba standpoint, with tourism and all these other things, it could be a good perfect storm to actually do some good justice here and cooperate with our authorities and getting the right evidence they need to reopen it or extend that statute of limitations. So let's hope.
How dangerous is it to, I mean, we think of some of these places, we think of, resorts and beautiful this and that. And it always is said, if you stay on the resort, you're good. Not everybody does. A lot of people, especially young people, like to go to these areas for holiday, for celebrating, being young. Um, eh, how dangerous are some of these places today if you do go off of the property, so to speak, of where you're staying? It sounded like she went out with some friends for drinks into town, and then obviously things went very, very bad. Are these isolated incidents, or are these areas where there's far more murder, kidnapping, and things of that nature that go on than we're really aware of? I mean, of course, unless it happens to an American citizen.
Right. Great question. And I know it's a pressing question these days because we cover a lot of true crime
Yeah.
and then the state of chaos in the world right now, and as it always is, believe it or not, makes it a pertinent question because we want to go out, we want to enjoy, we want some downtime, we want to travel and explore the world, but we also want to feel safe doing so. So I kind of have a two prong attack on the answer here.
Okay.
First, anytime I travel abroad, I'm always going to the State Department website, and I'm always looking at the travel advisories from U.S. State Department to see what those advisories are saying. I call hotels, I talk to concierges, I get a lot of data and input if it's an area I'm not familiar with,
Mhm.
and this would be one of those things I do. So that's some due diligence on that part.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, when we're going to look at society at a whole, and this, because I remain calm, cool, and collected, and nothing kind of rattles me
Hmm.
in this sense, because as you know, I'm a huge reader of history.
Hmm.
And if you look at an historical context as the evolution of our species, sapiens, and this, I took this right from the book Sapiens, the percentage of human beings that we have death and violence caused by other human beings is at an all-time low in the history of our species.
That's
Now,
interesting.
it is. So what happens is the numbers of people that we're seeing this true crime being perpetrated on and are victims of and all these things, those numbers might be higher than they were a couple years ago, but by percentage of population, they're actually lower. And so the percentage of population of death and violence by man on other man is at an all-time low for our species. And so if you look at the 50,000 foot level, the world's a safer place than it was 100 years ago. It's a much safer place. And we're counting in war, we're counting in murder, we're counting in all these things. So the data is very, very firm on this. So if you're fearing the world is turning into chaos, it's not. The world's doing what it's always done. And believe it or not, as a species, we're getting safer and safer because we actually have a lot of laws and order in countries, in areas of the world that never ever had it before. So
Mhm.
it's constantly expanding and getting that bubble of societal norms of law and order is bigger than it's ever been. So that's the good news. But luckily, we have things like internet, we have other resources that we can do due diligence when traveling to an area. I mean, just 100 years ago, if you're traveling in most countries in the world, you could not travel down the road without fearing bandits.
Sure. Yeah.
That doesn't
And it,
happen.
and it sounds like a crazy idea, but that wasn't
It
that
wasn't all
far
that
back.
long ago.
Yeah.
So give yourself some historical context to say, okay, take a deep breath. We're all going to be okay. Now, if I'm going to travel to a specific area, a specific region, on a specific cruise ship, I mean, all these things come to play. You do some due diligence, and that's what we do. We create allies, we network, and we ask questions. We ask what questions, what specifically should I look out for? What are some of the challenges of traveling to this area? What are some of the backgrounds of the region in particular? What are some of the conflicts that are going on? What should I be aware of if I go there? And the biggest question ever, would you bring your wife and family there yourself? And then you take in all that data and then you assess it. And then you assess, is it worth the risk of going or not going? In most places, it's a very, very low risk because remember, the news and social media and shows like ours are fantastic at highlighting the things that stand out. And in a lot of, and in most places, it's very rare. It doesn't happen that frequently, which is very fortunate, very lucky. But I mean, as you know, I'm a backpacker. I go on the Appalachian Trail pretty frequently. I'm a section hiker on there.
Mhm.
There was one case a couple years ago about a hiker getting killed on the Appalachian Trail. So the whole world says, "Oh my God, it's not safe on the Appalachian Trail." Well, you're not counting the thousands of people a year that hike through the Appalachian Trail. That's one.
Yes.
So it's important to have that context and just stay calm, do due diligence, do your research, but at the same time, a good historical context keeps us sane.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense where uh, those things are at an all-time low, but the information that we're able to hear
Yes.
on individual stories and horror stories like that are at an all-time high, which is what I think our brains have a hard time processing.
So use it like this. So the knowledge gives us a sense of calmness, and instead of trying to use the information that we now have, we have droves of information. I mean, when I was growing up, the only information I had about someone missing was on a milk carton. I
Yeah,
mean, that was
true.
it.
Yeah.
And so instead of being fearful because we have this information, be enlightened because we have this information. Know that you can make healthier choices and say, wow, this gives me context. It gives me some information. And so I can make some more choices, some better choices. At the same time, though, if you were making those choices inside a complete vacuum without any information, the outcome would most likely be the same. You'd be fine. And so it's not talking about being reckless. It's saying use the information that we have access to today to make a more informed decision, but do not become paranoid. Because if you're allowing all this information we have access to paralyze you, no, now you're not living. And that's no fun.
That's true. I will wrap that. Hey, it's Tony Brueski. If you want more of our interview with our guests, be sure to check out our podcast, Hitting Killers with Tony Brueski. Just search that wherever you download podcasts and press subscribe. Also, you can check out our YouTube channel for the full video version of the interviews as well, under the same name, Hitting Killers with Tony Brueski. Check it out, subscribe, binge, and enjoy. Thanks for watching.